Now, just like every other trade, in the world of heavy equipment and dirt work, there are specialists. And just like every other trade, the specialists make it look easy. Today we're watching and talking about grading and drainage, which is, after design and engineering and financing, pretty much the first step in any construction process, and which is known more or less colloquially as breaking ground.
Dirt is kind of disrespected because it's dirt. Everybody figures, oh, it's just dirt, it's whatever. It's like, so people don't have a problem tearing up the work, really, right? Yeah, because we drive on it, we do this. It's like, yeah, I get it, but it's still our work that you're tearing up. I get how you see it's just dirt, but when you dig through it and you throw your stuff everywhere.
Now, soil engineering, or geotechnical engineering as it's called, involves a lot of expertise and specific knowledge and familiarity with variations due to geography and specific site conditions. So please take everything you see or that we say in this video with a grain of salt. We really just want to show you a big picture, so that sometimes when you drive by a job site and you see equipment like this working, you might wonder exactly what they're up to and maybe have some idea.
You got your rough guys, you rough in the dirt, get it kind of so close, pushed around. Like that's honestly what the dozer is doing. It's getting it roughed in. He'll probably get it within, maybe a half a foot or so. Maybe even a little closer, depends on how good he is. I've seen guys get it within 2/10 or so with a dozer.
So the dozer's like the first equipment machine. That's
yeah, he's the mucker. Yeah, they call it the mucking machine. It moves a lot of dirt around and puts it in place. And then the motor grader and the scraper usually come by and finish it and get it fine-tuned.
This is a project that's going on in Arizona. And what these guys are working on is not just leveling out and getting the slope correct on this red dirt, but they're dealing with a very expansive soil type. Yes, this dirt looks, pretty normal to the naked eye, but it is highly expansive. What that means is, when it comes in contact with water, the superfine clay particles in the dirt swell up, and in some cases, the soil can expand up to 10% of its original volume. Now, as you might imagine, when the dirt underneath the foundation in a building expands 10%, it is a big problem. It can cause heaving and cracking and breaking of utility lines and all sorts of serious issues. There are lots of ways that this can be remedied. In some cases, the soil under the structure is dug out and hauled away completely, and then it's replaced with something non-expansive or structural. What's happening here is sort of a hybrid fix, and here's how it works. First, the soil is dug out from under the location of the building's footings, 2 feet below the bottom of the footing. This is known as an over-excavation. All that dirt is then stacked up in a pile like this and mixed with water. They need those clay particles to soak up the water and swell. It's not exactly mud yet, is it? But it's not dry either, and as a bonus, there's no dust. It's at this point where the dirt is at its maximum volume. Then, while the dirt's still damp, it is carefully put back in place and graded and sloped and compacted to perfection. Now the dirt will begin to dry back out, which will shrink it to its original previous size.
It's kind of like these cracks right here, right? So obviously this dirt has been wetted up a lot, and now it's shrunk back down. And their theory kind of is once it's wetted up, it's going to only fill that crack back up again. So if you get it so wet one time, it expands as much as it does, and then as it dries out, right, it's like a crack in the concrete. It dries out, that crack's get bigger, but now if it gets wet again, it only fills up as big as that crack, so it won't really push the dirt up
So
no
it's
more.
made the room it needs.
Yeah, it's kind of like a, what do you call that in the concrete? The
expansion joint.
yes, it's almost you're creating like
So
a.
is that why, I know the water truck is keeping the dust down, maybe primarily, but it also is getting wet.
Yeah, it needs the dirt needs a certain amount of moisture in order to pass the compaction test.
So that it's like has that space to like dry out and expand.
Yeah, some dirts do that, and and some is just on how tight it is too. This is they're getting kind of see how tight it is. But that's kind of like I said, it's a little bit of a general idea of it. It's not necessarily like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure there's going to be guys say this and guys say that. Everybody sees things a little different, I've noticed in life.
And there are a lot of other ways to deal with expansive soils or other site conditions that you may run into. There are pad caps and scarification, lime treatment, remove and replace. There are certain fabrics and post-tension slabs, and in the most extreme cases, driving piles. But my recommendation is always to work with the engineers and contractors from your area, because they are the ones most likely to be familiar with the methods that will actually work best where you are. To me, the most interesting part of a job site like this is the equipment itself. The way these machines work together is a thing of beauty. The contractor doing this work is Mitchell Velma, who you have seen before on our channel. He did some dirt work for Nate that we featured in an earlier video. Well, since then, Mitchell has grown his fleet of equipment and has been a part of some really neat projects all across the Phoenix Valley, which is about what you would expect from a guy who started operating equipment, get this, at 5 years old. Thanks for watching Essential Craftsman, and keep up the good work.
When I was a kid, I was 5 years old. I used to ride around in my dad's lap on the loader when I was 5 years old on the farm, and we'd like go feed the cows or clean up the manger line for the cows to feed in front of the cows so you could feed them new feed, right? So I used to always go ride in his lap. I thought it was so much fun. All the equipment, you know, when you're a kid. When you're a kid, you either like it or you don't, right? And I loved it. So one day the guy shows up, he has a little meeting, climbs down off the loader, you know, left me on the loader. He's down there having his conversation or whatever. I put it in gear, I just start going. He looks at me like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm trying this thing. I just kept going, and then ever since then, I backed it back up, you know, I did it, scooped some dirt, and he's like, all right. So ever since then, they let me, you know, didn't really use it, but I'd like get on it, start it up, tip the bucket up, throw like calf feed in there, like, you know, a bucket of milk or something, and then calf grain and throw it in there. And then I'd go drive it around the dairy, dump it off. People would show up and be like, who's on the loader? You can't even see nobody, because it was so tiny, you know, couldn't see over the seat and stuff. Come pulling up, like, little tiny kid.
So you were actually like running.
So then 5, and then when I was in the 4th grade, I had one of those old the Ford, I forgot what kind of Ford it is. Old John Deere, or old Ford with the metal seat and the 3-point hitch on it. Ran me over right across my chest like that. It bucked me off. I was pushing in feed for the cows, and the thing, it buckled like that, and I flew off the seat right under the rear tire. Like, when it came back down, it bounced, and it bounced that blade up out of the ground, and it took off, and it drove right over me. I was left there laying on the ground. My friend was actually on the back. I was in the 4th grade. And then my dad picks me up, takes me inside, lays me down, says, you'll be all right. Comes back in 20 minutes, and I'm still laying there just crying, bawling like a little baby. And he's like, all right, I'll call the ambulance. Calls the ambulance or the hospital, and he's like, hey, I need to know where the nearest hospital is. They're like, why? He's like, oh, my kid got ran over by a tractor. They're like, oh, you need to not touch him. You need to leave him right there. We will be there to get him. And he's like, huh? You don't need to come get him. They're like, no, we do. Fight for Life showed up out on my road and shit, and they put me in. They came inside, got me, put me on the board, put me in Fight for Life. I was laid in the hospital for 3 weeks. Had nothing, no broken bones, no nothing. Just bruised with a tire track across me. Yeah.
How did no bones break in?
I don't know, because I was so little. I think they said I was young. They were still developing, so they flexed, I guess. It's the only thing they could figure out, because I had a tire print. So they're like, how do you have a tire print and no broken bones? Your body is soft still. Must have ran me over just right.
Your buddy must have
Had angels upstairs.
Yeah, your buddy must have been freaking out.
Oh yeah, he freaked out. He ran over there so quick. So yeah, that was an experience for life, and then I never got off the stuff.
Yeah.
You know, some kids that would scare and
So,
you don't
right-
want to get off of it.
so
Instead, I went right back home and I was
Yeah.
like, cool, can I do this again?
Go move some.
Yeah.
That is
I'll go
amazing.
get on a loader this time though.
Where does that like lead a kid? And like, well,
Yeah, no, I
you-
stayed in it and just stayed with it. And I guess sometimes they say hard work pays off. Maybe it does.